Mark Leibovich is a CBS News political contributor and the chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. So, Mark, lots of headlines to get to. But first, let's start with the ongoing health care battle on Capitol Hill. The House Budget Committee has narrowly advanced the Republican-led reform bill. Can the full House get on board?
No, I mean, I think that's very much an open question right now. I think, clearly they have crossed some barriers with some of these committees, but there's still a great, I wouldn't call it a groundswell, but a great deal of skepticism within the Republican House caucus, both among conservatives in the Freedom Caucus and also moderates. And until a lot of this stuff is resolved, it's not even going to, it's not going to certainly, get voted on. And, there's talk that it could be voted on as early as next week. So I think, if it comes to a head, it could be soon. But I think it doesn't, I don't have a sense of momentum beyond the kind of predictable optimism and the predictable selling that you would hear from Speaker Ryan and also President Trump, but actually to a more muted degree last night.
So, Mark, we also want to ask you about the travel ban. Two federal judges have now blocked the executive order, and President Trump has vowed to take his fight to the Supreme Court. Does his argument of national security overpower these judges' claims of discrimination?
Well, so far it hasn't. I mean, you can keep appealing this, and it can go up the ladder. And if the Supreme Court takes it, this might become one of their decisions in the next few years. But I think until then, this is clearly at an impasse, and this is a movie we've seen before. About a month ago. So, I think what we've seen in the last few days is that President Trump is learning what it's like to be accountable to other branches of government, whether it's Congress or the court system. And you can lash out. And also, by the way, even on Twitter, it's worth noting that we are, 11, 12 days removed from his tweet about the Obama wiretapping charges that he made. And you could say it's a distraction and he hasn't proven anything, but clearly it is taxing a great deal of the goodwill that he had with a lot of his fellow Republicans on Capitol Hill, and it's unclear what this is doing to move his agenda forward. So, yeah, it's an interesting kind of bucket of challenges for the president right now.
Mark, is it your sense that we will get to a point then where, because you're starting to see that right now with members of Congress, even Devin Nunes, while saying yesterday that that he has no evidence that this actually happened, said, well, if you take the president literally, right, he sort of brought that back to the fore. And is it your sense that a lot of lawmakers and perhaps even Americans are going to, at some point or another, say, look, what he says on Twitter and sometimes even what he may say to reporters isn't actually what's going on? And what does that mean for the presidency? What does that mean for the credibility of the office of the president?
Well, I think it can erode over time. I think as a practical matter, Paul Ryan was just talking about health care. It was carried on a lot of the cable networks. People were talking about it. People were following it closely. And all of a sudden, he was asked a question about wiretapping, and he said definitively, no, I don't think that I've seen any proof that any wiretapping went on. So that becomes a headline. And at a time when the administration really does need to be focused entirely on health care, because that's a really, really big and central part of the agenda from which everything going forward will spring. You keep having these very unforced matters that keep being raised and keep having to occupy the time of Republicans on the Hill who you need to be working very closely with. So at the very least, it taxes time, and it also, it can erode goodwill over time on the Hill. As far as a long-term toll, yeah, you can look at credibility, you can look at what this does to a president, what it does to the office, and it could have a bad effect there also.
All right, Mark Leibovich reporting for us from the newsroom of the New York Times. Mark, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.